A tiny West African seed became so important that part of the Liberian coast was named after the trade built around it. That seed was grains of paradise, made from Aphramomum melegueta, a plant in the ginger family. Europeans often called it Guinea pepper or melegueta pepper, even though it was not true black pepper at all. People love to say it was once worth more than gold. That line is dramatic, but the real history is more precise. The safest claim is not that every ounce beat gold everywhere. The safest claim is that grains of paradise was a prized long-distance spice. It mattered enough to shape trade routes, culinary fashion, medicinal use, and even the names outsiders gave to a coastline. The Grain Coast, also called the Pepper Coast, was not named by accident. The name itself shows how commercially important the spice had become. Botanically, the plant is close to cardamom and other aromatic relatives in the ginger family. Its seeds are small, reddish-brown, and strongly flavored with a warm, peppery, citrusy, gingery taste and resinous notes. That flavor meant grains of paradise was not just a weak stand-in for black pepper. It had its own identity. Medieval and early modern cooks used it for its layered heat, not simply because they could not find anything else. We should slow down on the phrase worth more than gold because exact price comparisons are often rhetorical, local, or poorly documented. Without a specific market, date, and weight, broad claims about literally beating gold are not careful history. But saying it was high value and prestigious is well supported. The evidence for long-distance demand is strong. By the medieval period, grains of paradise had become an established item in European trade and cuisine. The name itself seems to emerge in the 13th century, and that exotic wording may have worked like a marketing tool. A vivid, faraway name helped make the spice feel precious to buyers who knew little about the landscapes it came from. Medieval European demand for spices was driven by flavor, status, medicine, and humoral theory. Spices were not used only to hide spoiled food, which is a popular myth. They were luxury ingredients and markers of elite taste. Grains of paradise appears in recipe traditions, spice mixtures, sauces, seasoned wines, and dishes made with meat or fish. In elite kitchens, it could be blended with ginger, cinnamon, cloves, and other major spices. It also had a medicinal reputation. Historical traditions linked it with warming the body, helping digestion, and treating stomach problems. In humoral thinking, its pungent heat made it useful for balancing certain bodily states. But Europe is only half the story, and maybe not even the most important half. In West African societies, melegueta had culinary, medicinal, ritual, and symbolic roles long before and alongside European demand. It belonged to local foodways and social life, not just to export markets. In some West African and diasporic traditions, it became associated with purification, initiation, offerings, energy, and sacred or protective use. So grains of paradise should never be reduced to the spice Europeans bought. It had a deep indigenous history of its own. Trade in grains of paradise formed part of early Afro-Portuguese commercial networks along the Upper Guinea coast. European interest in West African pepper helped make that shoreline legible as a spice coast before later history focused so heavily on the Atlantic slave trade. That means the region's commodity history did not begin with enslaved people. Spices, gold, ivory, and other goods were already moving through complex systems. In Europe, grains of paradise became especially useful in the 14th and 15th centuries. Black pepper from South and Southeast Asia moved through long, expensive supply chains so an African pungent spice could become attractive. Melegueta pepper sat in an interesting middle position. It was prestigious enough to matter, but in some cases more available than Asian pepper. That helped it move into major European markets, while still keeping an aura of rarity. The spice also entered drink culture, which gave it a second life and later some legal trouble. Over time, grains of paradise was used in beers, wines, cordials, and spirits. Sometimes it was valued for flavor. Other times it was used as an adulterant that made a weak drink feel warmer, stronger, or more impressive. That double role explains why later lawmakers became suspicious of it. By the 19th century in Britain, brewing and adulteration laws treated grains of paradise as an illicit additive in beer. So a seed once prized in elite kitchens could later become associated with deception in industrial drink markets. Its decline in mainstream European cuisine had several causes working together. Access to other spice routes changed markets. Black pepper became more available, tastes evolved, and adulteration hurt its reputation. Like many once famous ingredients, grains of paradise did not vanish completely. It became more specialized instead of more central. Today, it still appears in some West African cuisines, historical food revivals, craft spirits, specialty beers, spice blends, and botanical supplements. Modern science became interested in it for a different reason: chemistry. The seeds contain aromatic compounds and pungent phenolics, including pyridols, gingerols, and related constituents. Those compounds help explain the seed's warming flavor and also attracted laboratory interest in possible biological effects. Animal and laboratory studies have reported anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, antioxidant, anti-diabetic, and other bioactive effects in extracts or isolated compounds. Some research has also explored thermogenesis, meaning heat production and energy expenditure in the body. Human evidence exists, but it is much thinner than supplement marketing often suggests. One small study in men reported increased energy expenditure in people who had metabolically active brown adipose tissue. Another randomized trial in overweight adults reported changes consistent with increased energy use and reduced abdominal fat. Those findings sound exciting, but they do not prove grains of paradise is a miracle fat-burning cure. The studies are small, they often use extracts rather than normal culinary amounts, and early results do not equal established medical proof. Some of the studies also involve commercial affiliations. That does not erase the findings, but it does make careful reading more important. Safety needs nuance too, especially when people move from cooking with a spice to taking concentrated supplements. Animal toxicology and reproductive studies suggest that high-dose or concentrated extract use deserves caution, especially in pregnancy. A long history of food use does not automatically prove the safety of a standardized high-dose extract. The same caution applies to its older medicinal reputation. Historically, grains of paradise was used for digestion, dysentery, warming, and general stimulation. Modern researchers continue exploring antibacterial, antifungal, respiratory, metabolic, and anti-inflammatory possibilities. But there is a big difference between promising pharmacology and clinically proven treatment. That gap matters. The best modern description is that grains of paradise is a promising bioactive spice, not a fully proven remedy. Culturally, it is a perfect example of how a commodity changes meaning as it travels. In West Africa, it belonged to living food and ritual systems. In medieval Europe, it became a luxury spice and medicinal ingredient. In industrial Britain, it could be treated as a suspicious beer additive. In the present, it survives in niche food, drink, and supplement markets. Even the name Grains of Paradise tells a story about medieval commerce. It sounds magical, and that was part of its selling power. Traders did not move only goods. They also moved stories, mystique, status, and imagination about distant places. This history also complicates the usual spice trade story that focuses mainly on Asia and Europe. West Africa was not a passive edge in that story. It supplied a spice important enough to shape maritime interest and geographic naming. The Pepper Coast was called that because of a real commodity geography centered on African landscapes, African knowledge, and African production. Its flavor also helps explain its survival. Grains of Paradise offers heat that is less blunt than black pepper and more aromatic, citrusy, and resinous. That layered profile is one reason modern chefs and distillers keep rediscovering it. So the seed's true significance is bigger than the line about gold. It reveals African trade networks, medieval branding, elite taste, and long-distance exchange. One small seed could flavor a meal, cross an ocean, help name a coastline, and then return centuries later in a craft spirit or supplement bottle.